Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here today on That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I've got my co-host here, Clint McPherson. And today we're talking to a marketing guru, Mike Moll, and we're really excited to have him on the show today. So, Mike, I want to kick it over to you, and the first thing is if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll dig into your entrepreneurial journey.
Cool. Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on. The word guru always freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah. I cringed when I said it, actually.
It's just because of that association with certain people who we all probably know who we're referencing, some people that are shooting videos in their garage with books and stuff. And I don't like being associated with guys like that, but
self-proclaimed.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
right. But I've been in the marketing game for the past 7 years. I was actually in insurance before doing risk assessment for casualty claims. So I don't know what happened there, but my life took a bit of a weird turn.
Had to get out of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually had a serious episode, stuck in the car, my arms and my body started shaking when I reached for the door handle. I couldn't physically open the door to go to the office, and I was like, no, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. So
that's a wake-up call.
Yeah. And to have that happen at 24, it's it's not great. So, so I quit. I started a software company called Gbot, your personal grocery shopping robot. It was supposed to be the be-all and end-all for couples and families grocery shopping together. It was okay. We had a vision that was better than the product turned out to be based on how long it took, and it never quite made it as far along as we wanted to. But while we were building it and obviously trying to support full-time developers, bootstrapping, we took on some marketing projects so that we could keep the bills going, keep everything afloat.
Sure.
And and then kind of as the software fizzled out, I bought the marketing book of business out from my two partners, and I've been running it as my own entity for the last close to 5 years now. So
okay,
nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it sounds like a version of a familiar entrepreneurial start where you just can't take the working for somebody else, or maybe if it's not as much not wanting to work for somebody else, but it's just hating where you work and what you do, and seeing sort of no future in it, or not liking what you see with the future.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when I went into the corporate world, I always knew it wasn't the right fit, but it was a good money fit at the time, and the security and the remote work, moving across the country. So it was cool. It was fun. But, one thing I always knew as, being an employee, I had kind of a mix of entrepreneurial stuff early on, and then working for people early on. And I was always a shit employee. I always had the opinion that I was smarter than everybody, and I hated being told what to do. So naturally, I just wasn't a good fit. I was a hard worker and I got stuff done, but, I was always the guy who was like, why are we doing this? Why are we filling out a form to get this other form? I'm not going to fucking do it. And they're like, no, you have to. That's the job. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. Go ahead, fire me. So let's see what happens. I was always that kind of guy where I never did well with other people's vision and guidance. I just always thought I was smarter than everyone. And I know that I'm not. But I'd rather, for me, being an entrepreneur means being able to die on that sword and being able to make those decisions to see if you're right. And so certainly not the smartest guy, but at least I can do it the way that I want to do it now. So it's a little bit more joyful.
Yeah, you can hold your own, right? I mean, as far as a good entrepreneur, a good leader surrounds himself with smarter individuals than him, right? And at times when I was in the military, because I was in the military for close to 10 years, it's dude, I have some shit leaders around me, right? Toxic leadership, or people that I know I'm smarter than, right? That I can make a better decision than. I was like, why are we charging this hill or doing this and basically putting all our lives at risk when we could do it this way and not have to worry about that, period, right? So with that said, for me, man, and you being a brand builder, being the host of the Market Me podcast, and just going from where you were in the casualty claims game all the way to where you currently are as an entrepreneur and leading, you know, the social media house, how has that journey been for you? And then and really my main question out of that too is a 2-part question, is how has that journey been, and like, why marketing, brother?
That's a great question. I was actually never in any form of marketing before. I went to university for a year. I wasn't a book-oriented learner, a class-oriented learner. I was always a doer. So I went to university for business. I was on academic probation within the first year. I knew I wasn't coming back for a second year. They knew I wasn't coming back for a second year. That was like my first touch point with marketing, but it was more like leadership and management more than marketing. I think when I look back to like the entrepreneurial things I did in my younger years, it really all was focused around marketing. I just didn't identify it that way. And so, when I started doing the app, I just found myself going online and finding opportunities to pitch it in a different way, or talk about it in a different way, or present it to an investor in a certain way. And it seemed like when I would read something, my brain really clicked with, oh, okay, well, what about this version of this? And how if we spin it this way and that way? And my brain just kind of naturally gravitated to those tendencies. When we were building the software, we didn't know we were going to start marketing for people. We just had people that had said, hey, I like the product. I'll put this money in at the beginning to be an advertiser. And, as the development took a really long time, I was like, okay, we got to do something for these people, or they're going to get tired of it. So I went on YouTube and I was like, how do you run Google ads? This is 7 years ago. And I was like, I just watched a bunch of videos. I'm like, oh, I can do that. No problem. And so we started, we reached out and said, hey, our product's taking a really long time. Can we just run some ads for you? You've put this money in as like experimental budget anyway. If it goes to, we already talked about it could go to zero, but like, let me see what I can do with it. And so, I just started doing it, and I had a cadence to the copywriting side and the user journey side. And my brain just like naturally clicked into it. It really wasn't any specific training or like a specific program that I took. My brain just really thinks in that terminology for whatever reason. And so, I kind of fell into it. I didn't really intend on it. And now, when you have that moment where you're like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, it was like that hit very early on. And now I've kind of adapted it. I've adapted it in a different path into different ways, than just, hey, I'm going to run your Google ads for you. We do mostly training and consulting and strategy these days, but it really did start. Yeah, it really did start with the need to adapt the business. It was supposed to be this software that could find you your best prices on groceries. And I was like, it's not working. And then, YouTube luckily was like pretty resourceful. And for whatever reason, that stuff clicked really easily for me. So I don't really know beyond, I just kind of lucked into it.
That's awesome, man. That's
cool.
Great. That's
yeah.
Great.
And I think that's if you can kind of luck into it and kind of fall backwards into something, I think that's a pretty good organic transition into it, where it's not, because it's not forced, and it's not necessarily like you're falling back into it like you just got lucky, but because there's a lot of hard work that led to that. And I think that's also important is to think about all the things that you didn't think paid off that really led you to where you are now. So with that app that you were developing, that you didn't, it didn't turn out exactly the way that you wanted it to, but it led you to what you're doing now. And so, so you were able through that process, through that journey, you were able to find value and, really turn that experience into a big positive for your career. So I think that's really cool. And if you're able to, find something that, you feel comfortable giving people value right from the beginning, then that's just an awesome way to do it. Because a lot of times, we can struggle with, we've got a great idea and we want to get it, we think that it's maybe there's a little more to it than there actually is, maybe. And, so we try and push it and get it out there, and it gets met with resistance, and it becomes sort of difficult to get it out there because it's maybe more built up in your head. But if if you're pretty quickly meeting a demand and people are coming back to you right from the beginning and saying, hey, I want more of this, I need more help, it's like, boom, there it is, right away. So that's a cool way to get into it and realize early on that there's, whether or not there's demand for your product or service. So
yeah. And I think one thing that really helped me is that I experimented a lot when I was younger, and like even in my 20s. So for me, I was very clear on what I didn't like. I worked more jobs than most people could even fathom working in a lifetime before I was 25. Yeah. And so, I worked at a golf course. I sold flooring. I had a flooring installation business. I did some nefarious entrepreneurial things in my teenage years. I was a breakdancer for a DJ for a while. I was a bingo caller. I worked at a lot of different things, and by tasting and testing different stuff, you're like, oh, like for example, like the idea of like working in the service or the food industry, no chance. I was cussing someone out first day, fired. Like I knew because I did it, and I was like, this is not a good fit for me. Yeah. I don't like stupid people, and I can't keep my mouth shut. I got to be out. Right. So, I think by trying a lot of different things up until I was 25, like really it was like 12 or 13 different activities, some entrepreneurial, some working for people. And I think I was like, okay, I know where to not be. And by having a big list of where to not be, it made marketing click that much quicker. And me just being like, yes, this is it. This is what I do.
Yeah, man, that makes so much sense because a lot of us go around, not outside of what we got going on, we've kind of found our why, right? And that why can always be shaped or molded a little bit more, but I'm in the space I know I need to be in. And you going through your journey and bouncing around and trying different things and knowing, hey, this is not me. I'm not doing this. Hell no, right? Like I need to be here. And it helped you find your why a lot quicker, right? And I'm not saying your whys can't change over time, but you're in your place in time. You're where you need to be, right? Because you found your passion. And like you said, marketing just clicked. And when you find that thing, it's like, hey, a light bulb goes off, right? For me, it was the same way. I worked at a golf course and a whole bunch of different things. And I was like, when I worked in retail, I was working at Best Buy. When I got out of college, I didn't want to take life seriously. And then I was like, just one Christmas from retail, bro. I was like, oh, hell no, right? From people calling you racist because you won't wait on this person to this and that, man. My mind was just blown. I'm like, what? Yeah. Like I'm helping an older couple right now and I'm a racist because I said, I'll be with you in a second, ma'am, or whatever it is. And it's just people going and demanding things from you when you're only one person, you can only do so much. And sometimes I feel like in the marketing game, it's the same way, right? You get that one client that's like demands everything, even though it's outside of the scope of work and all that stuff, but we can talk about that another day. But I figured out quickly that I didn't want to be in retail. I didn't want to do this and that. And it's funny that you said that because I feel like, we're in similar boats, right? We always dabble in this and I probably haven't had as many jobs as you have, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things that I found it a little quicker, right? So,
yeah, definitely. So, that's awesome. So, Mike, what do you think when you were starting out? What do you think? It sounds like a pretty easy, relatively easy transition from developing your app to getting into marketing. But what do you think was the hardest thing getting started in the beginning to overcome to kind of get you going and get you to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, I think sales really is straight up the hardest. I think, when you talk about ensuring your customers stay happy and building a good journey and a good path for them, sure. But getting customers is the hardest. It always is the hardest. And so,
sure.
For me, I did sales for a marketing company before I was selling for my marketing company. I had a sales team of 25. I was the director of like Western Canada. So I had already hired and sold projects to like 300 to 400 businesses. And so when you do it for somebody else, it's easier because you're not as passionate. It's more matter of fact. And I think having that, having that experience selling somebody else's product and service, where it's like, if it's good, you got to sell something you believe in for sure. But the problem is when you try and sell your own product or service, you want to over explain it. You want people to like really understand it at its core. And like, they don't need to, they just need to understand what's in it for them and what's beneficial to them. And so I think we have a tendency, I know with the app we did, where we overcomplicated it. No, it's going to do this and it's going to make your life easier. And they're like, no, but like, what's the point?
Right.
Like, but I've already, you've already overcomplicated it, and you get people just, okay, it sounds like it's too much, I'm out. So I think, sales and making sure that you are able to position your product in a way that's a what's in it for them way. I think a lot of people don't do a good job of that. I mean, I think one of the things, there's a guy, Alex Jeffries. I was at his conference in November in San Diego. Super smart guy. He said something that will stick with me forever. He said, people buy when they feel understood, not when they understand you. And if you take that information and look at the way that you sell things, you look at the way that your website presents things. If you look at everything, from your copywriting to the videos that you make, oftentimes we're trying really hard for someone to understand what our product is. What is it that we do? How do we do it? And they're like, consumers don't give a shit how you do it.
Yeah, you can load up all these features on it, and they don't care. Does it solve their problem or not? Yeah.
And taking the time, and he did a good job of teaching me how to like dive deep into it. So the benefit of it is this. So the benefit of us doing marketing is we take it off your plate. We're reliable. You'll have a steady stream of customers coming in, but like actually taking another layer into that, and like, what does that do for somebody? So it removes the uncertainty and makes you less uneasy about when the next lead is coming in. So that feels good. And then if that's booming, then you can spend time working on other areas of your business, like onboarding and servicing your clients better. And so if you position it about, understanding how they feel, what they're worried about, what they're concerned about, and you talk about it just like that, and then you present something that alleviates those things for them, it makes it a way easier yes. And I think a lot of people, I do a lot of audits of websites and copywriting for people, and most people just try and just dump a bunch of features on a page, and they get their, they get their 2% conversion rate, but like your website should be able to convert at like 8 to 10% if you bring the right traffic and it's positioned the right way. Your website should be able to do a lot more selling than most people's are able to do. So
and just keeping it simple, I think is a really important lesson, because you're right, especially when it is our own thing, we really want to, and I felt this a lot, and I still feel it with some things, I want to over explain it. I want to dig into every detail because we're so close to it, almost too close to it. So I thought that was really interesting what you said about, when you're working for somebody else and you're doing sales for somebody else, it's like you're one step removed, from ownership of that. And it's not that you don't care, but you definitely care less. So, and you have less emotion about it. We could talk a whole lot about emotion in business and, how to control that and everything, but it is definitely something. I think what you kind of indirectly touched on, the fact that, in order to get to where you want to go, you really have to try and take as much of the emotion out of business as possible. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, just think about what the pain points are for customers and dig into that and make it super simple. So when they're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or, Google, you just catch them on, a one-liner. Hey, yeah, that is my problem. Yeah, I could use a solution for that, instead of just bombarding them with all kinds of features. So yeah, that's really interesting. And definitely, I think the hardest part, it's probably the hardest part for most entrepreneurs is to get sales, and there's other things that can bog you down, but it's nice as a marketing agency. That's nice to have that be your biggest problem, because that's kind of what you're doing. You're helping other people with the same thing. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things that I learned selling another person's product with a simple system is like, there's some good and some bad. And so there's only 5 steps that you need to take to a sale, right? It's, we have a formula that we used to use, and it was really tried and tested. The cool thing about that formula is, okay, so your conversation only needs to be 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20, to get to even if that sale is just getting to a sales meeting, so it's like an initial call, and then you're trying to sell them on a proposal meeting. And then on the proposal meeting, you're trying to sell them on saying yes. Really, there's only 5 steps, and really there's only 10 objections. The challenging thing when you're doing it for yourself and there's emotion in it, they're saying something about price, or they're saying something about value or deployment or whatever those things are. And in your head, you're like, no, but I've done everything I can to make sure that this is like the perfect product for somebody. And you're not listening to the objections properly. Really, there's only like 5 or 6 reasons why people say no. And it's usually because you haven't provided enough details or value on the front end of it. Or you did a shitty job of explaining the value or the importance of it. And so, if you take the emotion out and understand, here's like 5 or 6 things why people would say no, and understanding which of those things are them actually asking you for more information rather than saying no. A lot of objections are for them because they're saying, I don't have the confidence yet, keep going. And I think a lot of people hear the objections and they think they're attacking my product. They don't understand what I've done for my product. And then they're like, no, that's not the point.
Yeah.
So saying that it's too expensive is you doing a shit job explaining the value of it.
Right.
And when they're saying it's too expensive, that's usually them prompting you to do a better job of explaining the value in it. And then, but if you don't recognize that, if you're not aware that that's the case, then you go back and forth, then you've already lost the sale. So I think, taking a step back and understanding there's really only 5 steps to a sale, and there's really only 5 or 6 total objections to what you're offering. And if you're getting them, put it this way, if you're getting an objection, it means they're interested.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, right?
Yeah. Otherwise they just say no, like hard no, hard pass. See ya. Definitely don't need this, but yeah. If they're asking any question about it, then they're probably interested on some level.
Yeah. And I think in our space it's where the education part comes in, right? How much you can educate them in that short of a period of time to lead them to that yes or no, whatever it is, right? To where, hey, it's very important for them to know like why it's this, why the value's there. And if you can't get that in an initial meeting, I mean, you're just at the end of the day, it's not even worth your time or their time to sit with you, because again, like you said, you're doing a shit job at what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And I mean, the challenge is, and this is a call out across all marketing, is like, there are so many marketing agencies that suck shit at what they do. Like the amount of business I get from the like, hey, I hired these people, we like dumped 17 grand in, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess it's like any industry, like in renovation and marketing and product, there's always going to be a lot of bad. But the problem with marketing, especially with digital, is like you don't have to have an office these days. Like I have full-time employees and I live either in Mexico or Toronto. Like we don't see each other. I don't see my clients. So it's one of those industries where you can do it, but it can also be detrimental because you don't really know who you're talking to. And there's a lot of
nuance.
There's a lot of shady people and agencies out there for sure. So it's
without a doubt. And I come across those every day, and I'm sure you do too, right? Getting those customers from those shady companies I'm happy, right? I'm like, hey, glad you screwed up, right? Because I've heard so much, how much money they're dumping in on a monthly, weekly basis, whatever it is, or a yearly basis. And you're like, you don't even know your return on investment. Like you can't measure that because this team didn't set this up for you. I mean, it's just mind boggling, man. And I know you've probably seen some stuff like that too.
Yeah. People looking for the wrong metrics, I think, and I've seen it with marketing companies before, where you can make you can make numbers look any way you want. You can get them to tell a story that you want to tell, and kind of say, well, you got 500 likes on your Facebook page this month. It's like, cool. And some people might get superficially excited about that, but if it doesn't lead to sales at the end of the day, that's the most important metric.
Yep.
However you get there, it could be playing the long game and, investing in email marketing and things that it's going to take a while. It's that, nurturing process might take months, but you're going to get to that sale. And yeah, I've definitely seen it with marketing companies where they're not promoting the right metrics, and some people just don't know, they don't know what they don't know. And so some clients are probably cool with that, but then it's, you really need to, it's good when marketing companies, and Clint does a great job of this. I'm sure you do too, Mike, is explaining the key metrics to people and educating them about what they should be looking for instead of what are the superficial things. So, that's, I think, where really good marketing companies can set themselves apart. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, man. And Mike, I got something for you, man. Building a team of, creative strategists, graphic designers, content creators and all that stuff with online marketing specialists as you are yourself. I mean, and keeping that team small, right? How has that challenge been as an entrepreneur, being the guy that, went off on his own and putting that team together? For me, it was exciting. But it's also been challenging because my team, if they don't do something or they're not held accountable for things, right? Because I at first when I started, man, I made a lot of mistakes, right? And so how has that journey been for you as an entrepreneur, putting that team together and really tightening up their shot group for you, man?
Yeah, so I think, I can't take much credit for it. My operations person, who is actually my sister as well, I caught her at a time that she was on mat leave. She was in veterinary medicine. I pulled her on for a couple of hours here and there, and then she's a bit of an operational wizard, so she just kind of took over shit.
That's awesome.
You need to be really organized. You need to have really streamlined systems and processes so that things can't get out of hand. I think a lot of people don't build in a good procedural infrastructure, SOP, standard operating procedures. And when you don't have those on the front end, then it's not necessarily the employee or the freelancer's fault. It's pretty much always your fault. Exactly. So I think making sure, we create documents and videos now of here's a video of every step. Here's each individual task to get something completed. And having that basically eliminates 95% of the errancy. But I'm super disorganized. I'm a fucking disaster, to be honest. For me, I'm the creative guy. But if I'm left to manage my own calendar, I'll book 7 things all within 4 hours, where I'm oh, how am I going to travel an hour in 15 minutes? Good question. So from the, the systematic thing, I suck, but I understand for me, it's I know that that's a big weakness for me. So I hired it way earlier than I could afford. When my business was doing 80,000 in top line, I hired a full-time person, and I was you're going to manage my life. Go. Cause I knew that if it was left to me, it was not going to work. And we've been able to double every year because I don't have to deal with anything that I suck at. So whether you invest early in a full-time person or you use a VA or whatever it is, get away from the stuff that you suck at, because you're not going to get better and it's going to bog you down. So if the process of invoicing or filing documents or setting up appointments or making sure that emails are responded to, if you're not good at it, you're in all likelihood not going to get good at it. So when you can afford to, put someone on it. You can use overseas VAs for $10, $12 an hour. Invest in that early, because what I did is when I put a $40,000 salary onto 80,000 top line revenue, I was basically not paying myself, but that allowed me to double because I could go and make more sales. I could run more ads and service more clients quickly. So get away from the stuff that you suck at as early as possible. But make sure that the person, if you're not the operational step-by-step person, make sure whoever's doing it for you is creating processes that are logical and simple and easy to duplicate. Whether you use like Cloud App, which we use for like, it has like the little photo at the bottom and then it's recording the screen and you can like walk through stuff. So Cloud App is like there's a bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But just recording all of your procedural stuff. That way, as a new freelancer or a new full-time person comes on, the learning curve is less. Because here's the problem, right? And I talk about this with clients. Like we do a lot of consulting for social media. And look, I don't actually agree in spending a ton of time investing in new social. I would rather everybody buy ads, but you have to have a procedure. And so my thing, like one of the biggest things you see is these businesses that get on blast because their social media person responded in such a way to somebody, and it was like, why would you say that? Like, super offensive or super inappropriate. And then they get fired, and then the company ends up, all over the internet and getting roasted. And I say to people all the time, like, that's not an unrealistic thing to have happen. Say you bring some employee in, you don't know what their childhood was like. You don't know what their upbringing was like. You don't know anything about them. From the personal side, you just know they look qualified for the job and that's great. So some comment comes in on social, maybe their right reaction, maybe the way that they were brought up is like, don't take shit from anyone, give it right back. Right. But like, that's not, you don't want your brand putting it out that way. So if you don't have these things in place, then you're leaving yourself susceptible to other people's interpretation and upbringing and everything that new like individuals come with, which is a lot of different stuff. So I think standard operating procedures is really important. Having brand guidelines, having communication guidelines, all that stuff, getting that in place. And even if it's just you talking on like video after video and creating an hour's worth of stuff, 2 hours worth of stuff, then somebody new coming on can come on and say, oh, this is our process for doing an e-blast or for communicating on social media. But having that video training at the front so they can understand where you're coming from, at least it would help eliminate a lot of the pain points because again, especially when you hire someone with experience, they come with their own bad habits and their own opinions on stuff. And so without having that, you're leaving it open-ended to what experience they have. And you don't know what that is. It's hard to get and dive in and understand. It's hard to ask that question. Tell me how you think about this thing when you're making content. It's like, wait, what? They don't know how to answer that. They just have a process. So if you give them your process, your brand approved processes ahead of time, it'll create a lot less friction.
Yeah, it makes it so much more of an efficient process for you too, so as you're going through it, I feel like writing things down, having a process, having a plan, it really, really helps you gather your thoughts and maybe miss some things. So as you're writing it out, you're like, oh, that doesn't make any sense from step 2 to 3. How did I get there? I haven't defined that well enough. So this is a good opportunity.
Yeah. And I think if you think about so even the way you explain something to a customer, if their marketing knowledge is 0 out of 10 and yours is like 9 out of 10, we even have a tendency to start explaining things at number 3. You know what I mean? So the CPMs and we're going to try and get the conversion rate up to whatever. And they're like, what the fuck?
Or eyes start crossing.
Right. And so, so it's the same for employees. I feel I take the same process for employees as I do for customers. It's like, how do I say this in a way that there's no room for interpretation? How do even if I have to dumb it down, they're like, no, I already know. It's like, no, I don't care. Just listen to the whole thing. I want to make sure we're on the same page, because if we make sure we're on the same page now, it eliminates a lot of the whatever later. So it might be a little redundant, but I don't care. Just bear with me and come through this process with me, because you'd be surprised at again, this the tiny nuances of their opinion or their thoughts, their experience with something else being different than what you want. So don't take any knowledge for granted, for sure.
Oh no, I mean, tactfully, you have to approach that whole situation as I'm not insulting your intelligence, but we're going to break it down Barney style, right from the beginning. So there's no miscommunication going forward. And so I agree with you on that. And like you said, what you said earlier about staying in your lane, basically about staying within your genius, what you're good at, not messing with the things that you suck at. I really think staying in your genius and continue to move forward with what you're good at and finding those VAs. I mean, I remember starting my first podcast last year, College Sports Hour, and that wasn't my genius, right? Like as far as everything recording was easy. Everything after that, like editing and dude, I was spending countless hours. And I was just at PodFest 2020 in Orlando, and it was basically the whole message there was, stay in your genius, outsource if you can, get it out of your hands, do what you're good at, but do not bog yourself down because you won't be able to grow that way, right?
Yeah. Well, I recorded 46 episodes of my podcast in the last year. I've never even had an editing software on my computer.
That's awesome.
I won't do it. I'm just assuming it's going to be hard. And like the idea of like, how do you creatively match up this and this? I'm like, I don't want to know. Move on.
Yeah. It's going to sound good. It's going to be, it's going to be compiled in a way that, people are going to be able to hear it clearly and understand it. But at the same time, the most important thing is just to get your message out there. Yeah. I do have a friend who has a podcast, and he is an audio engineer, and it's all about being an audio engineer and DIY stuff. And so like, I talked to him about it, and he's like, I kind of have to do the editing, because that's his thing. Right. So he's kind of like promoting his product with the podcast and the audio, the integrity of the audio. But that's such a unique case, for everybody else, it makes sense to just, outsource and outsource as much as you can in any business, as early as possible. I think the right in the beginning, at least for me, of any business, I think it's important to do as much as you can yourself until you figure out that you have a business, right? Like if you, I think if you outsource too much too fast without really knowing, if you have a sustainable, viable business, then that could get you in trouble. But I think the second that it's going to take off in any way, then it makes so much sense to invest. Talking about it, investing marketing dollars, it's the same thing. Investing in, like you invested in somebody to help you manage your operations, and even though you weren't able to make any money yourself, that's, I'm sure, paid dividends and then some at this point, and continues to pay off. And then with all that organization that you have, it from a business value standpoint, it would be much easier for you to sell your business if you ever wanted to, because taking yourself out of the equation is the most important thing, right? So you have standard operating procedures. You could basically, if you can plug anybody in and out of your system, and it still works, then your business is going to be so much more valuable. So I think that's important to consider too.
Yeah. And I think my advice for people that are the early stages is like, me investing in a person that early was like obviously a risk. I felt like it was the right decision for me, but I think software and applications plays a big part of the conversation as well. Like there are so many amazing tools, and look, I mean, I'm talking about 5.5 years ago. There wasn't even some of the stuff that's come out since. Like I just discovered a HoneyBook the other day.
Yeah.
It's magical. Like it does like, intake form on the website to brochure, to proposal, to contract, to invoicing. It's all in one platform. It's one of the greatest things I've ever found. Like, and I'm just going to switch over to it because right now, we send a proposal out, we do a DocuSign contract, and it goes into our accounting software and bills. And I'm like, this does everything. That eliminates at least 10 hours a week of stuff. So like look for technology and look for tools that can supplement it at the early stage. Because you might not be able to afford a person while you're still validating. But like, I always say you should, like for us, with the amount of different tools and stuff, like easily $700-800 a month that we use in tools. But those tools and apps, like a lot of people don't want to pay for software. What's the cheap way? What's the free one? But like if $500 a month worth of stuff is replacing a $4,000 a month salary. What are we even talking about?
Oh yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's so many tools out there, like pay for the premium stuff that actually can make your life way easier. Like why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that said, I mean, if you were to, and not to put you on the spot about the tools, but what is the most helpful tool or process you currently use as an entrepreneur right now?
So right now, you know, from the grand scheme of things, I would say, you know, our project management tool, Asana. We're thinking about switching over to Airtable because it's a lot more flexible. But yeah, probably Airtable. Obviously, Slack as a communication tool is really great. For me personally, for like organization and for simplicity, so the products that we offer are these training products. So it's like you learn live with a marketing expert how to do your own marketing. So it's like all video call, it's all scheduling. So for me, I use a combination of Calendly and Zoom. So basically I send a Calendly out. It gives you my available times for the certain type of call. You book in the time that makes sense for you. My calendar is already open to that time. And when you book the Calendly link, then it automatically updates and creates a Zoom meeting room for us. That's awesome. That way, so from the administrative side, it's like I send the link, you pick the time, it puts it in both of our calendars. We just click on the Zoom button and we're in and we're moving. So, and I use that for like scheduling my podcast, scheduling intro calls. Like I've got maybe like close to 30 different Calendly links that do different things. That's right. Awesome. And if people just need a couple hours of just straight up consulting, like you can go on a paid Calendly link. Right. You know what I mean? You know, you want just like a 3-hour brainstorm session. Boom, my invoice goes out with the Calendly link. You put your credit card in, it dumps it into my bank account. So like those types of like organization and booking tools, I think are the most effective for me, just because I'm terrible with it. But as a team, for my team, you know, small, like simple, light project management software and Slack for like being able to just jump around and communicate are probably the biggest ones. And then for me, it's a Calendly and Zoom because I do so much video.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's so many automation tools out there that make almost everything so much easier. And I think when you start to, if you're doing something manually for a while, you'll start to feel that pain as you realize like, man, I'm spending an hour or two a day on this little menial task, which could easily be subbed out with a $50 or $100 a month, you know, app or something. And it just makes so much sense so quickly. Yeah. Like I've had conversations with people, you know, like debates about, should we get this $50 app or something? And it's like, yeah, because if it saves even 1 hour or a half an hour a month, that's it, you know, then it's 100% worth it. So
yeah. So and then I would say the final one is the one I just mentioned, that the HoneyBook one. I just discovered it a couple of weeks ago, and we're just in the process of onboarding with it. But like I'm super impressed. From like I need to like send stuff out, get approvals, create agreements, get paid. It does it all in one step, and it's pretty cool. So I haven't found any real big holes in it yet. I haven't activated it for the business yet, but we're getting like probably by the middle of next week we'll have it implemented. So I'm excited to give that a try. You know, an exercise that I was told about years ago is the best way to like figure out what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing is if you make a chart, just like in a doc, like a Word doc, like a table, with basically 4 columns, $1, $10, $100, $1,000 in each column. And then take a look, like take 2 or 3 hours and take a look over your past 30 or 60 days and like look back in your notes and your calendar, look at everything that's happened, right? And put every single task, no matter how small it is, just reply to emails, booked appointments in my calendar, return phone calls, sent invoices, like every little step of what you do, put them into a bucket where $1 is the least impactful on the business or the most like challenging for you, but do it relative to like sales or like what actually drives growth. So for example, me hosting the training calls is $1,000 task. me hosting my podcast is $1,000 task. Me being paid to speak is $1,000 task. My $100 tasks are, communicating with the clients, creating video training documents, and then all the way down to like booking appointments, booking intro calls in my calendar. So map every single one out, and then everything that's not $100 or $1,000 task, figure out a way to automate it or outsource it as soon as possible.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really cool way to visualize it and to get it down on paper, because so often it's just like, it's up there. We have these ideas of like, I can definitely streamline this, and then months go by and you haven't really streamlined it, and it's just as painful. Mm-hmm. And you're like, man, why am I not growing faster? And that's a really cool way to visualize that.
And what you'll find with doing that is it's like you'll have 10 $1 tasks, to have 3 $10 tasks, to have 2 $100 tasks, to have 1 $1,000 task. And then if you look at like, so me being on a training call with somebody is an hour of my time, billing around $500 an hour. But me sending an invoice or following up on an invoice is the same amount of time, but the least amount of impact. So it's like, if I just automate that follow-up and I don't have to go in, interrupt myself, like you could be doing other shit with that time. So it's like get it out as quickly as you can.
That's awesome, dude. That's really cool. Yeah, definitely. Well, Mike, I think we could be talking to you for a long time. We've got, tons of questions. I'm sure, we definitely love to discuss with you. I think maybe we'll just end on one final question. What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
That's an easy one for me. I've worked for a lot of different people and places. I worked for a very large insurance company for almost 6 years. Jesus, almost 6 years. And just watching the procedural and efficiency laziness of a big company, I just hated it so much. And watching, hey, fill out this document so that you could submit this form. And it was like, wait, why do I need permission to do the form? The form's part of my job. Just watching big dumb shit happen like that, I was like, I just hated it so much. And I don't really talk about this very much, but when I actually worked for them, part of the job, this actually sums it up pretty well. Part of the job was that you had to fill out a performance report. So every year, your manager was supposed to give you a performance report. But you were supposed to create your own performance report to tell them where you think you were.
Yep, I've seen that, yeah.
Hey, so what you want me to tell you, knowing that I'm going to be insecure and not want to boast too much, where I think I'm at, so that you can leverage this? I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And I never did it once. In the 6 years I was there, they're like, hey, where's your version? I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. It's your job. You tell me how I'm doing. I think I'm good. Let me know. And people are like, you're going to get fired. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Over that?
You're not gonna, you know what I mean? Off that dumb shit. And I just never worried about that stuff. So I was just like, no, I'm not. I'm just not going to do it. And they're like, no, but you have to. I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. I think that just watching stupid things like that happen, and then never really being able to say hey, this is why I think it's important, or it was just like, no, you have to do it because you have to do it. And I was like, I hate everything about that answer. If you don't have a real good reason why you're doing stuff, you're already in a problem. And if it's on something this small that only happens for an hour once a year, how much other dumb shit is happening? And I just really I just don't like being told what to do. And I couldn't deal with the stupidity of how things run in certain scenarios. So I just knew I had to do something on my own, basically.
Yeah. I hear you. I've been there. My first job out of college was working for a large power plant company. I mean, they designed and built power plants. So huge multi-billion-dollar company, probably 30,000 employees or something. My building had 900 people, which that was one thing where I was like, can't do it. It's too weird. I want to know the people. Every day you're riding up the elevator with somebody never even seen before. You had no idea they worked at the company, but but also, yeah, there was a lot of that, and a lot of doing things to get acceptance to do the thing that you just really needed to do. And there was, I just saw so much fat in there, so much nonsense that could be trimmed out. And then, you really, and I look at that now with companies. You see large tech companies, they get started, they get, a lot of money very quickly. And they hire a couple thousand engineers or something. And I'm always like, and I am an engineer, I'm not a software engineer, but I'm like, why that many? Why is that actually necessary? And then you get things that are, you end up with things that are clunky or don't work, or they're bleeding money and they're wondering why. And so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the key is like, I think a lot of people were more built to be employees. I have conversations all the time where people are like, oh, you get to like live in Mexico and you do this remote thing. And I'm like, yeah, but like, remember that like, there's been several times where like I had payroll coming up and I needed $9,000 in 3 days. And I had to fucking stay awake for 3 days to make $9,000 so that I could make payroll. Like, do you know how stressful that shit is? Yeah. Like, that's not fun. Yeah. So it's not for everybody. There's obviously a lot of that comes with it. There's a lot of stress and pressure, and like everything's your fault and everything's relying on you. Like I almost ran out of money a couple of years ago. I had to let a couple of people go. Like it was still the worst day of my entire life. It just was. I hated it. So I think, if you're doing something that you're passionate about, even if it's in a company or a bigger organization, that's fine. I think the key is like, look at the person that's like 2 or 3 levels ahead of you and be like, do I have any aspiration to be that person? Is this something that fits into because a lot of people want to work 40 hours a week and be done. Like I haven't had a 40-hour week in the last 7 years. It doesn't exist. Yeah, so if you want, if you're happy and you're working on something that you're passionate about, or you share a passion for someone else's vision, great, do that. But I think for me, I just looked up the chain and I thought like I could get there, but like, do I want to be where that person is? Like they look like they have a miserable job. Like I don't want to do that at all. So for me, it was glaringly obvious, but there's all kinds of obviously pressures and stresses. Like it's always stressful. You don't know, like people just decide I still have this now. Like people just decide, I'm not going to pay you for this. I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
why?
That's six
the
grand.
work.
They're like, yeah, but like, I don't really care. And like, you can take me to small claims court and it's going to cost more than this to pay. It's like people do it. That shit happens still now. And like I have to write off tens of thousands of dollars a year for people that just kind of ghosted on their invoice. Like that sucks. And you don't know, it's volatile. It's weird, but I love it. I like the challenge of it. I like the energy of it. I like the creativity. Like I know, we're talking in a time now where nobody's spending money. People are losing clients left, right, and center. Now I'm coming back to it saying, okay, what can we do? How do we make smaller, more affordable products when people can't be working and they're not marketing? What do they want to learn so that they're better off when they start up again? Like, so, having the ability to just pivot around and not be at the mercy of things, I think is like where my passion comes into it. So
that's cool. Yeah. You can be more agile, which is big advantage of having a smaller entity, and keeping it that way is you can be more agile. You can do what you want to do, how you want to do it, and adjust. Large companies it's difficult for them to pivot and to, adjust, by the time they've adjusted to something that's going on, you're already 10 steps ahead. So it's awesome.
Well, guys, I think that's a wrap. Mike, I appreciate you jumping on, man. You've added value to our listeners for sure. And we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to continuing a relationship one way or the other, my man. And guys, make sure you continue to follow us. This is episode 7. We're on YouTube. We're at thatentrepreneurlife.com. We're on Buzzsprout. We're on all the socials, right? As you would say. And all the major podcast aggregators as well right now. We just got up on iHeartMedia, which is pretty cool, or iHeartRadio or whatever it is. And we're very excited about that, guys. But Mike, like I said, man, I appreciate your time. And Andrew, like always, brother, it's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, Clint. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for being on.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right.
Peace.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.